You are listening to Leading the Factory Forward with your host, Lynn Friest. We share interviews with manufacturing experts and strategies for embracing the digital future, recruiting a new workforce, finding new business. Lynn is an advanced manufacturing strategist and leadership consultant who is on a mission to show manufacturing leaders how to improve their current operations while preparing for a digital future. And here's your host, Lynn Friest.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Leading the Factory Forward. This is episode 49, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about the manufacturing extension partners. Again, in general, here at Leading the Factory Forward, we're here to help you create a compelling future for yourself, your teams, and your organization. Now, I'd also encourage you to visit my website and download the summary at the bottom of the podcast episode so that you can use that as a tool to capture notes as you start your exploration on any of these concepts. Or simply to stay up to date on new episodes and things I'm sharing, go to my website and download the free worksheet, 3 Steps You Need for a More Productive Workday. So, on to our episode, the Manufacturing Extension Partners. Now, they can be a big help at any time, but I think especially during these times of change, they have a lot of great resources out here. They can serve as your thinking partner and a trusted advisor. So what are they? And we have links to the Manufacturing Extension Partnership website. And again, some quotes from their website. It's a national organization, but state-focused. And it's focused on helping small and medium-sized manufacturers generate business results for today's technology-driven economy. They're actually here to actively promote the importance of a strong manufacturing base. Again, I think, as we now know, that's more important than ever as to how we have our national security, and our manufacturing has always been critical to our success as a country. So the actual name of this is the Holland's Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which is where the MEP acronym comes for. And it's based at the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it's part of the National Commerce Commission. Now, each of the states has a division of this, and I live in Western Illinois, and so I've had the privilege of working with both the Illinois side of the river and the Iowa side of the river and the MEPs in each state. Now, these folks, they basically will tailor services to meet critical needs, and this could be from process improvements or workforce development, and also specialized business practices, talking about supply chains, innovation, technology transfer. Again, they're all worked on this. And then since they're a national network, they can draw on a lot of resources there too. Some examples in general from their reports of their impact: for every $1 of federal investment, and then there's always a matching state investment, they created $33 of new sales growth and $32 of new client investment. And this translates into an aggregate of $4.7 billion in new sales. And during the same time, for every $1,200 of federal investment, the network created or retained 1 manufacturing job. So again, while there was more money and the company themselves had to do it, they've had a great record of creating value for a reasonable price. And I encourage you to go either to your state's websites or to the national site, and they have good examples of the work and the success they've had. So what do they do? Or what are the things that they can help you with? I think in terms of operations. So they have talent and experience in lean production processes, how to identify those. They certainly have a lot of experience around quality and how do you define processes, and then just the general idea of how do you improve productivity. So one example that I saw in a project I worked with them on was they helped a company prepare for ISO certification. As the company was reaching out to other large companies to sell things to, they needed to be ISO certified. Another thing that the MEPs can help you with are questions or concerns around supply chain. Now, sometimes this means this is something you have to do in your business. So it may be you have to implement an ERP system that allows you to become literally visible and find new opportunities. So you have to be able to easily connect to both your suppliers and your customers in this new world, and especially if you want to diversify at both ends, the supplier end and having new customers. Then another thing the MEPs can help you with is, I'll say, technology scouting. So they have resources around Industry 4.0. And yet they can sit there and really help you explore what's the next step for you. They can help you decide what's just enough and just for you in terms of implementing or taking the next step in your technology adoption. And again, one of the examples I worked with the MEP on was they helped 2 different companies select an ERP vendor. They didn't themselves try to implement ERP, but they did help the company talk through what are the key things I need to do to get the right ERP vendor here since it's a significant investment, but it can have tremendous rewards if you've got a really effective ERP system. Then there's things around new markets. And some of this is about finding out who's out there. Some of it's about getting yourself known. It can even involve export. They have resources that can help you get involved in that. So one of the projects that we saw was they had people come in and they helped people explore what were the strengths and the products that they currently had and how might they fit in either different industries or in broader markets than they were today. So if they were marketing within 400 miles of their location, what are the opportunities out there 1,000 miles? Reach a little farther for companies that are smaller. And then finally, it's critical, the whole idea around workforce. So while the many other organizations and educational groups are working on workforce also, the MEPs have some unique things to help you, like their programs called Training Within Industry. So they can teach you how to teach people, your new employees, to be successful. Beyond that, another example of a project I worked with them on was they, again, found a third-party vendor to come in and help a company provide online work instructions. They were introducing new people. They had turnover in people, but they needed to have a solid process. And so they developed online work instructions that these new employees could quickly and easily access. Then another question is cybersecurity. And, I understand that cybersecurity is kind of like going to the dentist. We know we need to do it, but we really hate to look forward to it. But cybersecurity is always developing. It's become certainly more important as we've become more online. And again, the MEPs with their national connections and stuff have a great ability to help you take those first steps. Again, projects that I've seen is literally they said, what's the first thing you can do? And it's as simple as don't have people share passwords or have passwords, something like that. So they can get you started, even though you may just need to take some very simple, easy steps. And I want to reiterate that as small, medium-sized manufacturers, you have only so much talent in-house. And the MEP organizations can serve as trust as partners and in a sense bring in-house talent to you that they have, as well as they know the connections to external experts that may be useful to you. And they have regional managers that can help you think through what's the next right step and who can we find to work with that. They also work to create project definitions that are very concrete. So they don't just come in and say, I'm going to sell you a training or I'm going to sell you a presentation. They'll come in and work with you to say, okay, let's design this project. Let's make sure it meets your needs. You have clear objectives as to what you're going to expect the results to be. So there's no confusion and it's not simply a one and done or boom, we're here for one day and we're off tomorrow. They'll really work with you to get some good project definition. And then again, as part of their national program, they have to follow up with a third-party survey later after the project's completed to confirm the results. And again, those are published both at the state level and at the national level. So you can see in the aggregate, what were the results? How many companies did they reach out to? What were the impact that people had? And they're usually pretty dramatic and useful. And having worked on individual projects, I will say that I've seen the actual individual projects. And yes, they do have some really dramatic results that are well worth the investment. So another thing that MEPs do is they actually will survey the population of manufacturers to see what's going on so that they are trying to respond to the specific needs. Now, in one of the examples, I work again with the MEP in Iowa. It's called CIRRUS, or the Center for Industrial Research and Services. And in their surveys of manufacturers in Iowa, they had several things that they found that, were common themes. First was leadership. How do we grow new generations of leaders for our small manufacturing companies? Growth, bigger, wider, broader markets. Productivity. Again, having processes that are effective as we continually try to be more cost effective as well as scale up our businesses. Technology. A constant thing where it's difficult for, small companies to really adopt some of these fairly complex technologies. Workforce, and then some things that are not maybe what you always think about, but how to navigate regulations that are given to you by states or national governments. Again, it's smaller companies. It's hard to navigate all this stuff around regulation. And then the final one, which is not necessarily directly in their purview, it's more of an issue that maybe chambers of commerce would address, is healthcare. They want to provide healthcare, but it's a fairly complex business to do that and fairly costly. So they need some help navigating. But anyway, those were just several of the things that, again, the Iowa MEP found were needed by the manufacturers. Now, again, I've given you some quick and just overly brief examples, but I highly recommend you go to the link that I've provided in the show notes where there are actually 3-minute videos of successes in a wide range of topics and industries. And I think those really can spell out what are the benefits you might enjoy from working with an MEP. Again, I encourage you to visit my website, download the summary at the bottom of the podcast so that you can use that as a tool to capture notes as you start your exploration of this concept. The next piece is, again, thoughts for you as a leader. Now, in the last episode, I talked a little about agility, resilience, and process. So agility, this is now the opportunity to rethink your assumptions, look at the new reality, make the modifications you need to make. Resilience, what's your backup plan? How are you going to recover from maybe the twists and turns that happen? And can you consider scenarios? Okay, maybe 3 different things might happen. You don't know which one might, but think through, well, how will I respond to the 3 or 4 different scenarios that I might face coming up? And then finally, process. It's really great to have defined work, especially in this time of change, but you want to be sure you're not over-defining the work and making it too rigid. You want to be flexible, and yet it helps everybody if they know there's a process in general on how work gets done. Now, in this episode, let's think for a minute about 3 other considerations. Empathy. Are you still checking in with your teams? I know I've suggested this in past episodes, but it's hard to sustain that. And sometimes we've checked in with them, and now we're a couple of weeks down the road, and hey, it's time to check in with them again. Just one check-in doesn't do it. You need to come back, and there may be new fears and new concerns, and the world, again, is changing kind of rapidly. So you need to keep checking in with your teams. The next one I'll talk about is a positive outlook. And again, while they're not yet certain answers in many cases, are you portraying a positive outlook? Are you remembering both your strengths, your firm's strengths, your team's strengths and talents? You have a lot to work with. Make sure not only are you internalizing those strengths and the positive things that you have to do, but also help your team with those too. You guys can all figure this out. It's certainly possible. And then having an achievement orientation. And this is not setting up a whole bunch of goals and things that they have to do. This is really about asking your team to commit to moving forward and asking them to set milestones and goals. So this isn't a thing where we're setting up metrics to judge people. We're setting up metrics to learn. So, for example, you might be asking your team, hey, have we investigated 3 different ways that we might move forward with our product given our supply constraints? Have we done 5 outreach calls to customers this week? So it's that kind of thing. And I think it's really most effective if your teams are setting these goals. But it's time to talk about it because obviously when we have a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty, it's easy for whether it be for me or for you or for your teams, it's easy to be kind of frozen in place and not holding ourselves accountable to keep moving forward. And finally, just to encourage you and exhibit some positivity myself, you have made processes changes more rapidly than you ever thought you could. And now, again, what might permanently be changing? And think about what have you learned and what have your teams learned? And then finally, as I talked about earlier with positivity and stuff, keep looking for several right answers and circle back with your teams to rethink and reevaluate things because, again, the right answer today may look different tomorrow, and that's okay. That is the way the world is going to be here for a while. And finally, just keep thinking about what your value proposition is. What are the key things where we add value? Sometimes we have to draw ourselves back and say, what is it we add value? It could be our unique products. It could be our flexibility in our service. It could be our high quality. Get back to those core values and core places where you add value to your customers and think about those things. So again, thank you. That wraps up this episode. Now, in the next couple of episodes, I'm going to go through some technology things. And again, in my work with our local Chamber of Commerce, they created some what are called technology playbooks, which are a marvelous way to kind of introduce several new technologies. And so I'll be illustrating those for you, as well as giving you links to them in the show notes. But that'll be coming up in our next few episodes. And finally, again, I encourage you to download the notes at the podcast to help you work on these ideas over time. And then finally, if you just, again, want to keep up with the new things that I might be offering, or whether it be podcasts or other information, you can sign up for the free worksheet on 3 steps you need for a more productive workday on my homepage at linfriest.com. So all of those links and notes are available to you. And again, thanks for listening. Be safe and be well out there.